Hamish, thank you for joining me today. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to have a great time, I could tell already. But first, I want to ask you, how did you get into the world of sales?
A bit of a journey. So I actually started my career as a journalist. And then I went to what they call the dark side, which was marketing and public relations.
That's what
then
I
went
do.
to the really dark side of sales. And actually, I had moved to Calgary. My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, said, I want to do my master's at the University of Calgary.
Wait a minute, you closed that sale. Girlfriend at the time is your wife too. Yep.
Now as a wife, we just celebrated 18 years together at the beginning of July.
So you got the retention part down too.
Exactly, yes. There's one thing I'm not very good at, but clearly I've got one that I'm okay at. And I moved over with my current company that I was working for in Vancouver. And then 3 months later, my job got moved to Toronto. And I got promoted into inside sales. And that was really where I formally started in sales. When I was in the newspaper industry back in BC, I did take over as advertising sales manager for the weekly newspaper that I was working for when he left. And I did also sell sponsorships on commission for local amateur sport organizations, which is a very different type of sell.
I hear you. You know, earlier today we had that chat about how people sell pizza as pizza salespeople versus professional salespeople selling, like I do, consulting work. And you know what I mean? It's a highly customized product. Illustrate that difference, because I think that was a great example of mistakes that people make.
Yeah, it was an article that I wrote earlier this year based on a conversation we had with some clients. And the example I use is, if you called up a pizza place, pick any pizza place, and you said, hey, I'd like some pizza. And they said, great, we'll send you pizza, click. You're probably going to end up disappointed.
Yeah.
So something that we consider to be highly transactional, highly order taking, there's a lot of questions that go into it, but sales professionals, like yourself, who are selling not pizza, feel like they have to just go in, talk about how awesome they are, ask for the order, and then go away and hope that it's going to come across the finish line eventually. It's a little odd to me.
Yeah, no, I cannot. There's not a better example, because I tell you, my pizza's got to be whole grain and this, and you know what I mean? Like, you can't put that in there. Can't put this, no, light, easy on that. And half of it I would like this way. And it could go on for a half hour just to take my order, right? Just to make sure I get the right pizza. And I could tell you, if salespeople would just take half hour with their prospects, I think they will do a way better job in uncovering the pain, finding out if there's a fit. Any other mistakes, Hamish, that you can share, you've come across, or just that you observe every day?
Well, the number one is salespeople tend to be self-centered. They tend to talk about how awesome they are and how awesome their company is. And the example that we often use in our sessions is, it's kind of like me walking over and saying, hey, Solomon, let me tell you how awesome I am for the next 3 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you out for dinner. Probably not going to go over very well, but that's really how a lot of salespeople, myself included, I've been in sales since I was 19. I didn't know anything about Sandler until I was actually introduced to Sandler by my last sales manager. Mm-hmm. I was totally self-centered, walking in, talking about how awesome we are and how many awards we had won. And that's the number one, is being self-centered. The other one is getting excited. And you probably heard the phrase commission breath in your career. Yeah. And whether we literally get commission breath or not, but the moment that our prospect, or even our client, if we're talking about expanding our relationship, gets the sense that we're mentally calculating our commission, we're dead.
We're dead. Yeah, no,
we just got to be completely focused on them.
All credibility is right down the hill, right? They don't trust you anymore. And once you lose the trust, it's horrible.
In a moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a moment. The other one that we get a lot in, especially over the past 4 months, is making up stories. And whether, if it's a regular summer, we don't have a global pandemic, there's the seasons of prospecting fallacy, which right now is like, well, I can't prospect because everyone's on holidays. Actually, no, they're not. Right. But you believe that, so you're going to adjust your behavior, and then you're going to go tell your boss, yeah, sorry, everyone's on holidays, which is a story I made up in my head, instead of actually picking up the phone and discovering that actually most of the decision makers are not on holidays because everyone else is, and now they're getting stuff done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you because I'm in an office building where all the cars parked are those CEO cars.
Right. Right.
So clearly they're working. That's what I was thinking. I was like, if you needed to get a hold of any of these decision makers, they're all at their desk,
Exactly.
which is, good and bad, right? They're not following all the directions, but they are working. So that's a really good observation. So whether you're having a bad quota or quarter this month, or or you're having a good one, there's no need to think that the global pandemic is going to cause you to not hit your goals.
No.
Any other thoughts, Hamish? Because I could tell you that you guys hear more stories because of the fact that you're a trainer than anyone else. And also, speaking of awards, yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
So here's another one, and it kind of goes to that made up story. And Sandler's got this concept of disarming honesty, which is theoretically saying things that are not in your best interest to raise your credibility and then actually get the truth. Because really, the purpose of every interaction with a client, prospect, really any human being, is to get to the truth. And so we had a client very early on in the pandemic. This was probably end of March, let's call it. They sell a software platform for occupational health and safety. So in one of our sessions, we do a thing called VIPs at the start of the session. So they share a victory, an insight, or a problem, and we celebrate the victories and insights, workshop the problems. And they said, hey, I have this proposal out, and we had essentially agreed that we were going to move forward on this platform before everything got locked down. I don't think I should call them and ask. And we said, well, what's the worst that can happen? And they said, they're going to tell me that they're not moving forward. And we said, right, can you live with that? And he said, and our client said, absolutely. We said, great. So what are you going to do? They're like, end of this class, I'm going to make that call. I got a text message 90 minutes later that said they had closed the deal.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think it helps having the reinforcement. And I think it's a one of a kind thing that I've seen. Just like I said, I could easily drum up or drum up some sale and excite our team every 6 months, and then it's dead, right? Every single month after that. Or I could talk about the same thing and consistently do the role play so they understand. Can you share a little bit about how reinforcement actually is completely counterintuitive, because people don't think that's necessary, because once they got their sales training, they think they're good to go, but it's actually not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The hardest 4 inches to move in our life is from here to here, from our brain to our mouth. And for adults, there's an adult learning model called ACASH. And so short version is the first A stands for awareness. So when an adult discovers they have a skill gap or a knowledge gap, they don't know how to make a cold call, they don't know how to coach their sales team, they don't know how to flip an omelet, they go out and they acquire knowledge, and that's the K. And so they listen to a webinar, they go to a boot camp, they read a book, they watch a video, and they go, I have acquired knowledge. I have filled my gap. The problem is, if we don't take that knowledge and put it into application, that's the second A, it's all useless.
Yeah.
And then eventually the application becomes a skill. And the skill, you have a skill, Solomon, when someone says, hey, you're really good at fill in the blank. Whatever fill in the blank is, that's when you know that you've got the knowledge down to a skill. And the H is habit. So habit is what Sandler calls becoming a product of the product. It just sounds like you, and you've been doing it your entire life. When I got into Sandler, a friend of mine who actually became my first client ever, I actually signed my papers for Sandler 3 months before I went, or 4 months before I went for my initial training. So I had gone through the entire program 3 times before I even went to initial training. And my buddy said, I used to could tell when you were doing Sandler to me, because it was like a switch flipped, and you're like, now I'm going to use this. And he said, now I can't tell anymore. And that's when I was getting it down to that skill and habit level.
Wow. Speaking of ACASH, you're so good they got the 2020 David H. Sandler Award. How does that make you feel?
Really uncomfortable, actually. I grew up on a farm in a village of 500 people in British Columbia, Canada. And I am 6'7". I've been the tallest kid in my school since I was 6. And I got a lot of attention, usually for the wrong reasons. A lot of teasing, a lot of making fun of. So I am very goal-oriented and very accomplishment-driven, but I tend to deflect praise. And so to be honored with the 2020 David H. Sandler Award in front of my peers, and it was wonderfully inspiring, and I was incredibly grateful to receive the recognition. But it was also very, very uncomfortable for me because I just do stuff. I'm just
Exactly.
a guy, and sometimes people like it. So I am grateful, but at the same time, wildly uncomfortable.
No, that's a really big, and like I said, I'm not a trainer to know that's like the award for every single
It's the top
person.
award. Yeah, it's the
Exactly.
top
So
award that we have.
one other thing, speaking of achievements, you've written a couple books. So
Yes.
tell us about that.
So first book was on accountability. Second one was on change. So I write books on topics no one likes to talk about. And the book on accountability was really about busting the myths of what accountability means, because really in the Western world, North America, Western Europe, it's really about, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And that's really not what accountability is at all. And it goes to that Sandler rule, which is not actually the one I picked to talk about today, but Sandler rule of they can't argue with their own data.
That's true.
If it comes out of your mouth, it's real, or their mouth, it's real. If it comes out of your mouth, you're a pushy micromanager.
It's very,
So how can
very
we
true.
adjust that? And then the book on change, and right now we've been living through change for the last 4-ish months.
Yep.
Change is easy. Change is a light switch. Change is we don't have a benefits plan today, we do tomorrow. We get to go to our offices today and we don't tomorrow. That's change. It's external and impersonal. The problem is we have these squishy emotional things called human beings that we work with. And humans don't change, they transition, which is a very internal and very, very personal process. And the thing that happens with leaders is they go through that process as well. And we'll leave COVID and all those changes aside. But let's say picking a CRM or moving an office, they go through all the stages of transition 6, 9, 18, 24 months before when they first started thinking about the change. Fast forward to today when they roll out the change, they've forgotten that they went through that transition. So they roll out and they go, hey, we're moving the office from here to here. And they're shocked when 100% of their team's not like, great idea, boss. Don't know why we haven't done that forever. And now they're like, what the hell do you mean? This is a brilliant idea. And here's all the reasons. Trying to make an intellectual argument on an emotional response.
Wow, that's deep. And I always say this to the team: the only thing that's constant is change.
It is.
So you can't fight it. We have to be open to it because sometimes it works to your advantage, sometimes not so much. But
absolutely,
isn't that what's happening to the sales world, right? With COVID, you can't go drive and see your prospects, can't handshake. You can't, no, it's a different world. And how is, I guess the people that you train, how are they handling that? And anything you could share and how world has changed?
Yeah, very much so. So we work with a Red Seal journeyman machinist, and so he sells now to machine shops. And of course, his world was largely visits, right? Walk into the shop floor, talk to the owner, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, that's not happening now, but he shared that his management team is really pushing to keep doing the visits. And I said, well, just make it like Shakespeare, right? You be out in the parking lot, they can be up on the balcony, and you can have your conversation back and forth. He wasn't a big fan of that, but we have a gentleman older gentleman, cost reduction consultant, and his entire prospecting pre-COVID was networking. Wow. So he's at like 5 lunches a week, 3 breakfasts a week, couple of evening events, and overnight that disappeared. So for the first couple of weeks, he's coming to our sales group and he's like, what do I do? Like, my business does not exist anymore. So through our support and through the support of his colleagues in training, he got some ideas. And by end of April, beginning of May, he had closed 3 new pieces of business.
That's awesome.
By completely shifting his way of going about building his business. We've had plenty of clients who have shifted, of course, right over to some sort of video conference. And they're actually finding that it's easier to get a hold of decision makers because, phones are forwarded to cell phones and they're connecting on that human to human level. Really, Sandler is about having more effective human to human interactions professionally and personally.
Absolutely.
So they can reach out and say, Solomon, I'm genuinely curious how you and yours are doing at this time. And that is a human to human conversation. That is not a prospecting call.
Right. And again, like you said, there's no commission breadth. in that.
And there's no commission, Brett. Absolutely. I actually had a call this morning with someone who I'm connected to on LinkedIn. And so one of the things that I do if I'm connected to someone on LinkedIn is I'll connect with them and then send them a, thanks, Solomon, glad we're connected. Look forward to connecting offline, because I like to know the people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn so I can make introductions and things like that.
You're like the only person on LinkedIn that has that, I think. I agree.
Appreciate that.
If somebody asks me, can you tell me more about Joe? Which one? You know what I'm saying? I may not know anything about it because they're inviting you every second. Connect. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe exists. That's what you can tell
exactly.
about Joe, right? And then I will reach out and I will say, Solomon, we connected on LinkedIn. The purpose of my call is to spend 10 minutes or less getting to know the person behind the LinkedIn profile. Wow. That's the whole purpose of my call. And I actually had a salesperson, they're a VP of sales for a cleaning company. So they're doing really well right now. And so we had a little high-level conversation, and they said, so you're calling about a course? And I said, I appreciate that, I'm the evil sales trainer who's going to try to, trick you into giving me your credit card. But I'm genuinely curious to get to know you. So if I called you up and said, I'm calling to get to know you, I mean that. So if you don't want to keep the conversation going, I'm really okay with that. But please don't think that I am trying to do something underhanded. I am sincere in my intentions, and I will tell you my intentions up front. And right away they're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't mean to,
right.
It's like, hey, it's okay. I get it. I'm a sales guy. I'm even worse. I'm the sales trainer. I train the killers. But if I call you and say, I'm calling about blank, I mean, I'm calling about blank. Now, on some of those calls, the person I'm talking to is like, yeah, you seem like a pretty cool guy. Like, how do I explore if Sandler's a good fit for me? I'm like, well, here's the process, but like, that's not the purpose of my call. So do you want to set up another time when we can actually have that conversation? Absolutely. Let's do that. Great. Again, can't argue with their own data. They're pulling me forward. When our prospects pull us forward, we're not pushy salespeople.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's one of the differences too in Sandler, the upfront contract. And I think that's I think that's a key when somebody has been trained versus a sales rep that just shows up and said, let me lay out all my things that I have and you can pick the one that you want. Maybe you can share a little bit about the upfront contract, because like you just said, hey, the reason I'm calling is that's it. There's nothing else. Exactly. Would love for you to share if you can.
Yeah, happy to. And it kind of ties into actually the rule that I had selected, which is no mutual mystification, which really stood out to me. And actually the way I got introduced to Sandler, the very short version of the story is my manager said, have you ever heard of Sandler? And I said, no. And he said, well, it's really how you think and talk and act. And I said, well, thanks, I think. And then that night I did some Googling, and it was kind of like I walked into a church and God spoke to me. And so the upfront contract really lays out at the beginning, why are we here? How much time are we going to spend? What do you want to cover so it's a good use of your time? Here's what I want to cover so it's a good use of my time. And here's some potential outcomes of this conversation, all of which are okay with me. And that last bit is something that we actually have to train our prospects on as well, because they're not used to having salespeople say up front, I might tell you that we're not a good fit to work with you. Or you can tell me that you don't think we're a good fit to work together. Because that's like, sales guy's going to tell me no, that's kind of weird. So sometimes we have to do a little extra step and say, Solomon, are you really okay to tell me that you don't think that we're a good fit to work with you? Because if it is, still love you, just not going to work. And that's fine by me.
That is fantastic. And I think just doing that, you're already set yourself apart from other people that they're going to talk to. And they're going to be open to giving you some information now, because they're not going to have their guards up where, what's your middle name? Can't tell you. Right? What are you going to do with that information? That's kind of how you feel. It's like this hostility, like, wow, like I cannot get through to this person. How can I ever help them? Exactly. Right? If they can't tell me anything. And also talking about no mutual mystification, that's a really good point. I think you got to expand a little bit on that for those that are not sure what mystification is. What's Hamish talking about in mystification?
And really that's, for the listeners, for the viewers, think of a moment in your life where you said something to someone, could be professionally, could be personally, and you walked away thinking that person is going to think, say, or act based on the information I just gave them. So, personal example, honey, the garbage is full.
I get that every day.
Yeah, perfect. And
I walk as soon as
you just keep walking, right?
Mystification.
That's great.
Yeah.
That also goes into the Sandler rule of never answer an unasked question. So now there is mystification, because what I said, what I meant to say was, Solomon, could you take out the garbage? Instead, what I said, the garbage is full. And in your mind, you're like, piece of information.
Thanks for the information.
Received,
yes.
All good, moving on. It's the same thing with, Solomon, we'll certainly think about it and get back to you. Got one.
Yeah, right.
90% in my funnel.
That's true.
No.
Yeah.
What does get back to you mean? What is, I actually had a VP of sales who I did the LinkedIn call on, and they shared with me that, they're going through some restructuring. So not a good time to chat. And they said, call me in 5 months. And I said, happy to do that. So our next conversation is not a cold call. How about we put some time in the calendar? I'll send you a meeting invite. And then if we have to move it around, at least we've got something to move around so we don't end up as ships passing in the night. And this person literally went, fine.
Wow.
And I said, I'm only going to send you a meeting invite. I am not putting you on a newsletter. Because again, they've got all the head trash of like, oh crap, I'm giving my email address to a sales guy who's going to put me on a newsletter. Only sending you a meeting invite. If we got to move it, we can. Very okay. But I'd like our next interaction to not be a cold call. And so far, myself and our clients have never had a prospect say, no, I love taking cold calls. Please cold call me.
Right. No, that's a really good point, because most of the time I'm trying to dig up the information. So what do they say? Who is the decision maker? And you don't have any of that information. So
exactly.
That's, what I'm saying. And how can you assume that you're going to close this deal? Right. There's absolutely no, I don't know if it's possible other than luck at this point. That's what you don't want, right? That's what you don't want to be.
Exactly.
Sales position. Exactly. I like how I think Sandler puts it, like, hey, yes, it's all right. No is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you finish it. No,
maybe. Over's not.
Yeah, no not maybes. Okay, yeah, exactly. Over. Maybe
and
it's
that's
the death.
Key thing is, in no mutual mystification, is our number one job as communicators. So whether we're communicating professionally, communicating personally, seller to prospect, supervisor to direct report, spouse to partner, our number one job is to create clarity, absolute clarity. So when both people walk away, they may not have liked the conversation, because maybe the person had to give me some information about my behavior that maybe was, hard for me to take. But we have complete clarity in terms of what's going to happen next and why we had that conversation. And if we can, and we teach the leaders we work with, if you're my sales manager and you're like, hey, Hamish, who are you going to talk to today? I'm like, well, I got a call with Stephanie. Okay, well, what are you going to talk about? And I lay out the upfront contract. And then you say, that's great, Hamish. If I called Stephanie, what would she say is going to happen in the call today? And if I start doing a little bit of a wiggle,
right,
well, maybe there's a bit of mutual mystification going on there.
That's very true. But prior to calling Stephanie, we need to get a pre-call planner.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah, that's the key. That's what I would be looking for. Where is the pre-call planner? But any other final thoughts? I mean, obviously, you can tell that this is natural for you, and there's not a surprise, right? How you've gotten to the top of all the trainers. So congratulations on that. But any final thoughts? Anything else that you can give to a person that might be starting their first years in sales today, right? Today or next week might be their first week. What advice would you give them?
Great question. So first thing is, create a personal vision for yourself. We work harder for our personal goals and our professional goals. And as David Sandler said, you can be part of your own plan or part of someone else's plan. And that doesn't mean, if you're part of your own plan, it doesn't mean you're not working for somebody, but you're working for that person because you believe that working for them is going to get you to your personal goals faster than working for somebody else. So create a personal vision for yourself and make sure it's your vision. One of the things that I screw up a lot is I'll be doing some goal setting and I'll be sharing them, and someone will be like, well, what if you made that goal 20% bigger? And because I've got a bit of a pleaser script, I'll be like, oh, that sounds good to me. And then I will say and do things that are not in my best interest because I'm attached to a goal that's not mine, which is really silly. So personal vision, number one. Number two is tie your corporate goals, so your sales target, to achieving your personal goals. And usually your personal goals are bigger than the business goal. And then the last thing is create a proactive plan to achieve your personal goals and have fanatical discipline to the plan. Discipline means keeping our appointments to ourselves. When I was new in Sandler, I made 5,000 cold calls in my first 6 months in Sandler. And that was either speaking directly with or leaving a voicemail for a decision maker. So it was between 9,000 and 15,000 dials in my first 6 months. My coach and I figured out that whenever I dialed the phone, no matter what happened, if I picked up the phone and dialed it, I made $89.32. So I put a jar with $89.32 next to my phone so I could know that every time I picked up the phone, I made $89.32. And if I didn't pick up the phone, and I'm pain motivated, so that I didn't want to cost myself money, if I didn't pick up the phone, it was $89.32 that I wasn't going to put in my bank account at some point in the future. So those three steps are really key. Personal vision, tie it to the corporate goals, and have fanatical discipline to your proactive plan to achieve your goals.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now I got to figure out how much money I got to put next to me so that will discipline me to get through all the Zoom meetings, right? That we got to get through every single day.
Amen.
And I think that's a great place to stop. Hamish, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I could definitely see you doing this with me again, asking and getting a little deeper into some of the nitty-gritty topics that Sandler has to teach. So thank you again, and look forward to having you next time.
Yeah, take care. Thanks, Solomon.